Florida governor signs law requiring colleges to take surveys on beliefs. So this is actually one of those news items that isn't technically religiously affiliated, but I still thought it was interesting for us to talk about. Republican Florida Governor Ron DeSantis recently approved legislation ordering state colleges and universities to survey their students, faculty, and staff yearly regarding their beliefs. The goal of the survey is to ensure viewpoint diversity and intellectual freedom. The legislation does not specify for what purpose the survey results will be used. The survey will evaluate the extent to which competing ideas and perspectives are presented. Furthermore, the state-mandated survey may determine whether faculty, staff, and students feel free to express their beliefs and viewpoints on campus and in the classroom. The law will take effect on July 1st, and the survey will be conducted annually starting September 1st, 2022. So, yeah,
this
go
is
ahead.
some 1984 nonsense right here. Because like, this is basically thought police. This is the government. This is the government getting involved with like, I want to know what you believe. Like, this is like, guys.
Without telling you why I want to know that. It's like, why? What are you going to do with this data?
Yeah, but I keep telling. I was told that the leftists are the thought police. I was promised some authoritarian 1984 stuff of thought policing by the left. This is like the right wing. Like, look, they're like actively like, oh my God, critical race theory is being taught to our children, and then we look at it like, no, it's not. Not to the children, maybe in university, but then the right-leaning people, they come and like, we want to know what your kids believe. Like, there's going to be an annual survey just to make sure that they're not believing the wrong things. Like, holy crap! Like, what? Stop! Like, this is the stuff that the right-leaning people want to scare us about the left-leaning people. Like, if this, don't tell me, Susan, you know this. If this was done by a Democrat, Ben Shapiro right now would be losing his mind. Like,
the liberals are coming for you.
You know they would not stop talking. Imagine if a Democrat wanted to have a survey to see what the children believe in schools. You know, Ben Shapiro, Officer Tatum, every single one of them, every single one of these right-leaning content creators will be making a non-stop content about like, oh my God, they're coming for your kids. But yeah, go on. You're muted.
It gets worse. It gets worse. So, like, in this bill that he signed into law, it's not clear what the results and the data gleaned from this survey will. What is the state of Florida going to do with that? Well, while signing this bill, DeSantis kind of gave us a peek or kind of a threat into what this is going to be. So when he was actually not when he was signing, when he was announcing it, he threatened to defund universities found to be, quote, indoctrinating students with what he described as stale ideology. But what is that? And it's up to Republicans and the state's Board of Education, who doesn't believe that education should be taught as a fact, to determine what that stale ideology is. Really what this is he's been implementing a lot of bills that restrict or pose a lot of free speech threats in Florida. So he recently signed a bill that expands civics education. And when talking about it, he talks about how students need to be taught that communism is evil. Now, I don't believe that that's the language in the bill, but when that's the way he's talking about it, it's like rings a lot of bells for me. And this is coming from someone who does think communism is evil. But I'm like, why are you, what? You can't just write.
This is the Red Scare. This is McCarthy back again. This is I mean, okay, communism I think is wrong, okay? You know, but you should learn about it. I don't think that it's the school's job to tell you what ideology is evil. Like, this is such a Christian way of like looking at it. They should just teach you the history and, you know, objectively go over what they were teaching and the data on what happened in history and what's evil and what's not evil, you have to decide that this isn't, you know, it's not the school's business to do ideological manipulation of like telling you what's right and wrong. You should be able to, it should just give you the tools and give you the information. Like these people are like, the fact that he's saying that, oh, we need to teach them that it's evil, like you have an agenda here. You just want to make sure like they're more. And by the way, these people's definition of communism is anything that is government involvement, okay? Like, so they're like, oh, we have to teach them that communism is oh, it was evil. And then like, okay, what do you mean by communism? We're like, oh, if you increase taxes, that's communism. I'm like, oh, providing healthcare, that's communism. I'm like, oh, making like providing like education, like, oh, that's communism. Like, oh my God. So all of this, all of a sudden, they have an agenda and they want to say like any safety net, any government involvement, all of a sudden becomes evil, right? Like these people, like they're like, this is active brainwashing of children. These people, if they had all the power, they would actively be involved in brainwashing your children, specifically to make sure that they're not left-leaning and they become more in line with their ideology. Like they would not hesitate. If they could, they would not hesitate. And these are the same people that want to scare you from other people brainwashing your children, but they would not hesitate to get involved in everything. They would want to shape your children's minds exactly in the form that they want. But go on, Suze.
Well, the kind of the motivation behind this is this big concern about, you know, what people broadly paint as and generalize as like woke ideology in the universities and how tenacious and overrepresented it is in universities currently. So I think that's a lot of the motivation behind this. But it's not the state's place to get involved in this. I mean, because these are publicly funded universities. For example, there was a big controversy back in 2017 when the University of Florida they agreed to have, I don't even know if I can say his name on YouTube, but R. Spencer on campus. And it was a big controversy, but they came to the conclusion that although the University of Florida doesn't like his message, we are a public institution and we have to continue with having him here for the event or whatever. I can't remember the specifics, but they deferred to the First Amendment. They were like, we're a state institution, we can't do this. So it's not clear how this survey is going to unfold. But the Rabbit Atheist had a very good comment. He was saying the governor of Texas, who is Greg Abbott, and the governor of Florida, who's Ron DeSantis, seem to be in a stupid competition. Actually, what they're in competition for is who is going to be the political heir of Trump's mega cult. So this is who we need to watch out for, you guys. Ron DeSantis in particular, I think is going to be a very important, like, right-wing populist politician moving forward, especially going into the 2024 elections. So yeah, it's who is taking over this political mantle, because we found that there is a great population of, I call them, you know, Trumpist Republicans who are basically actually a lot of times not even Republicans. A lot of them hate the GOP. Who is going to take over that huge base that is very willing to get very active behind what they believe in? And so the two of them are in big competition for who's gonna seize that popularity that's just waiting to be, you know, taken up. I think DeSantis is a smarter Trump, and so I think that he's gonna get a lot farther.
I hear the exact same thing. Some people think that he might become he's probably the best Republican candidate for, you know, becoming the president, because he's basically has all the appeal of Trump, which I don't understand, all the views of Trump, but without but a lot more intelligent in the way he speaks, right? So that makes him extremely dangerous. Like just take Trump, remove all the stupid talking points and the way he speaks and idiocy. They say that that's what you get. You get DeSantis. So this is like a lot more dangerous weapon. I mean, if this guy becomes president, like this is really dangerous for the United States, and he has a good shot at it, if what is being said right now is to be believed. But yeah, like this is really bad. But go on.
But it's also completely inconsistent and hypocritical on his part, because on one hand, he's calling for, you know, a free marketplace of ideas in the university, and these leftists who are infesting our institutions, they don't give us any, you know, they're so overrepresentative and they have too much power and they're taking over these institutions. But on the other hand, and they're indoctrinating our students. I talk to so many parents who are concerned that their children are getting indoctrinated in university. So he puts the belief survey on the universities. But on the other hand, at the lower schools, that is kindergarten through 12th grade, he put in a ban on critical race theory. So he's saying, actually, in lower education, you can't have this open, free environment. In upper education, we're going to be polling people to see if they're maintaining this environment. Like, wow. But we're not, like, we're going to, you know, collect all this data, but it's still not clear what we're going to do with it, even though he's threatened to defund universities that don't properly show the demographics that he wants to implement in his state.
So from what grade to what grade is critical race theory banned?
Kindergarten through senior year of high school.
Senior
all
year
education, all education before college.
Think senior year, I think high school is a place where you should be able to learn about critical race theory, not as an endorsement, but you should be able to, like, this was like critical theory as a whole was a major part of his philosophical thought in modern history, right? So now it's banned. Like, you can learn about it. Like, what the hell? Like, even objectively, you can't learn about it. Like, that's insane.
Well, this is kind of a different discussion, but this whole ban on critical race theory thing, and is critical race theory taught in our schools, I think is often talked about in not very smart or comprehensive ways. So technically, throughout K through 12 education, most of the time, it is not being formally taught. Critical race theory is not being taught as a theory, like in most lower education. But what people are trying to talk about, or what they're getting at, is that there are many programs or trainings or things that are informed by tenets or ideas derived from critical race theory that are taught in those places. So
right.
I just wanted to say that it's a little bit more nuanced than what people are saying.
But their bill is not nuanced. They're just like all forms of, like, even objectively, you can't teach that, right? So that's like,
oh yeah, no, that doesn't make any sense.
Right. So there's that. Also, their definition of critical race theory is also as broad as their definition of communism, because they're like, oh, you can't teach critical race theory. What does that mean now? Because there are many things that are technically not critical race theory, but it could be like critical race theory might touch on that, but you could also talk about it while not teaching critical race theory. Like, you could talk about, like, any mention of differences in how different races of people have been treated, or any form of teaching people about discrimination, or people standing in society based on ethnicity and the history of that. Now, can all of that now be categorized as like, oh, this sounds like critical race theory to me? Like, again, this is such a broad, like, very vague definition of you being able to just ban anything you want. You know, basically, like, you could basically, right-leaning bigots could basically make it so that you can't teach about their bigotry, because in their eyes, if you teach kids about the history of bigotry and the current existing bigotry of right-leaning people, they could be like, "Oh, this is banned under the fact that it sounds like critical race theory, and critical race theory is banned." Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is it's really dangerous behavior that is being, like, it should be illegal for them to be able to do this. But go on, Susanna.
No, you're completely right. Like, is any seminar that teaches about just racial sensitivity inherently informed by critical race theory? No. You know, but they want to paint it as if that's the case. Like, it's so funny to me because so many of these Republicans or conservatives that talk about critical race theory, like, actually have such a poor understanding or misunderstanding of what it actually is. And it really shows when they talk about it. And this is one of those examples. And so, the Rabbit Atheist is saying about if it should be taught to children as a theory, as a movement in philosophical thought or sociological thought. He's saying it should be introduced as part of social studies to juniors and seniors, at least as a concept, so people actually know what it is. Exactly. Like the fact that the idea of Marxism exists, like that's important to learn about.
We studied Marx in school, okay, in Vancouver. This was like in college though, but it was so professionally done. Like we learned so much about a lot of Marx theories, and not once during this entire semester, not like 3.5 months with this teacher, not once did I feel like this teacher was for or against it. Like not even once did it came across like this. It didn't even cross our mind if this was being promoted or was being taught to us as something dangerous. Like we didn't even think about that. Like many years later, where people were talking about like people were fighting over these things, I was like, oh yeah, I actually studied this in school. Like even while I was studying it in school, it never crossed our mind that this was being taught to us as something good or bad. We were just learning what this was, which was how it should be. Anyways.
Hey guys, if you're a fan of Blasphemy and Sexy Callie, you know, like me, then you need to be sure to subscribe to our newsletter, link in the description below. Because if you subscribe, we will send you a free copy of our Blasphemous Art ebook. And let me tell you, it is the tastiest blasphemy that you can find anywhere available today. And we are so generous with our blasphemy that we continue to send you more blasphemy every week. So make sure to subscribe, link in the description below.